Hello. Hi. Wow, after that, I have nothing to say. It's true what Laurie says. I actually started in show business when I was 3 years old. And it wasn't my parents pushing me. It was all fate. It's been a strange and kind of winding road for me that landed me in St. Paul, Minnesota. So, all right, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, but then whenever you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. I have really strong opinions in how you can make a career in show business. I think it can be luck. You can all of a sudden win American Idol and become Fantasia or somebody. But mostly you can have a career as a working performer, as a working musician, as a working director, a working producer, if you do some certain things. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll first fill in the blanks with what Laurie was talking about. So I started when I was 3 years old. I just wanted to perform. I wanted to learn how to play the piano. I wanted to sing. I wanted to dance. I don't do much dancing anymore, but at the time, that's what I wanted to do. And I happened to be in a place where I started singing and dancing, and there was a talent scout there who said, hey, you know, we want to use this kid. He'll be part of a group of kids that Art Linkletter sponsors. At the time, Art Linkletter was this famous guy who was involved with children's. He wrote children. He wrote a book called Kids Say the Darndest Things. And I traveled around with this group of little kiddies called the Art Linkletter Tottentots. I was a Tottentot. And from there, I started working in show business. And when I was 16 years old, I graduated from high school and produced and directed my first show in New York City. And it was a revival of a show that had flopped. And again, the fickle finger of fate hit upon me. I was in a building, the show was playing in a theater that collapsed to the ground. So immediately we were front page news. And there was all of this talk about this 16-year-old kid who was producing and directing his first show in this building that collapsed on our heads. Not to mention that it happened to collapse during one of our final dress rehearsals. So there were people in the audience and the cast was on stage, and something, God, came over me, and I was able to lead everyone. I made the decisions about how to get everyone out of the building, and everyone was safe. And I still look back on it today and think, where did I get those balls? I don't know how I had them. But that's what happened. And then, strangely enough, someone made gave me a challenge and said, if I could save the set and costumes from this show, they would give me a Broadway theater to put the show on for 2 weeks. And I waited on the street. I slept on the streets of New York City with my blessed father, who was completely supportive of this. And we waited for them to let us into the building. And strangely enough, it was a 43-story building. And we were on the second floor. And strangely enough, the way the building had collapsed, right above it collapsed like this over the theater. So all of the sets and costumes were safe. And we were able to get them out of the theater, and the show went uptown and played in this Broadway theater for 2 weeks. So I look at it now and I think, what a dog and pony show I must have been. You know, a kid who's producing and directing and is in, you know, catastrophes and can make it happen. But that did open doors for me. I continued to direct and I continued to produce, but I really wanted to be a singer. That's what my life was about. I wanted to be a singer. And I ended up in Los Angeles making some records, and that led to me being on Broadway in Cats. And eventually from Cats, I started to, and Superstar, as Laurie mentioned. But eventually another door opened, and I was asked to direct a production of Jesus Christ Superstar. And from that, I ended up directing 18 productions of Jesus Christ Superstar all over the country. And that led to me working all over the world as a director, and eventually, oh, I forgot to mention, one of the shows that I also was in was called Sophisticated Ladies, and that starred the Duke Ellington Band And from there, again, the fickle finger of fate came in. All of a sudden, I was touring with the Duke Ellington Band all over the world. We played Tokyo and Paris and the United States. And that led to me working with Herbie Hancock. Everything, as Laurie was telling her story, it's funny. You know, you do these things every day of your life. But I suppose I must have continued to invest myself in them, because each job led to the next job. And it didn't necessarily always make sense. I mean, why in the world would Herbie Hancock pick me, this little white kid from New York City, to be the lead singer with his band that also had Larry Coryell, Nestor Torres, Buster Williams, Wayne Shorter, to do this world tour with him? But it was, obviously, he saw me invest something in another project that I was involved in. I didn't let down. I didn't just go through it. I didn't just walk through it that day. He saw me on a night, apparently, when I was on. And I learned that I needed to be on all the time, because I had no idea who was going to be around looking for my next gig. That's how I would find my next gig. And through a long series of events, I decided I wanted to settle down, and I had a telephone call from the Ordway. I'm from New York City. I still have an apartment in New York City. I got a telephone call from the Ordway, and I thought, well, I will certainly come out to Minnesota and practice my job hunting skills. So I went to this interview thinking I was practicing my interviewing skills. But I had it in the back of my head that I really wanted to settle down somewhere. And I got off the plane, and they took me to the Ordway, and then they took me to the Guthrie, and then they took me to the Dakota. And then I realized that I really wanted to put down roots in this city, because it's a hotbed of art. It's an amazing, amazing place, and that's what led me to become the artistic director of the Ordway. Do you have any questions before I go into my spiel about show business, about how to get into show business? No questions. Okay. Well, there are 2 microphones that we have, so that I can certainly hear what your questions are. I'm going to bring this near me so I keep my notes. Okay. I think it's really pretty clear-cut. As I said earlier, you could be lucky and you can win American Idol. That happens to a few people, but that doesn't happen to most of us. That's just the way it is. There are a few opportunities where luck comes into play, but that doesn't really happen to most of us. But I do believe that you can become a working artist. And I think it takes a couple of things. The first thing that I think it takes is that you have to be real. You have to know what you can do. I can dream all I want that I'm going to be, I used to dream that I would be Bruce Springsteen, you know? But I really didn't have those kind of chops. I didn't write those kind of songs. I didn't sing that way. I had to get real with what I could do. It turned out that I was a really good pop singer. And once I realized that I could sing pop, that started opening up a lot of other doors. Then I started exploring what do pop singers do? Who are pop singers? What other kinds of styles of music could I possibly sing? Sure, I could approach singing like Bruce Springsteen, but that really wasn't what I was cut out to do. I turned out I could sing theater songs. I hadn't really thought a lot about that, but turned out that was something I was good at. So I felt like I was becoming real in show business and finding places where I could fit in. I mean, I wasn't going to go and sing at First Avenue. I could dream about singing at First Avenue all I wanted to, but that just wasn't going to happen. And from being in this Broadway show that was filled with jazz, I started exploring, well, could I conceivably scat sing? Could I sing bebop? And all of a sudden I discovered, yeah, I can do it. But it all took this tenacity of really being real with myself, not allowing myself to just make believe, oh yeah, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and I'm going to be Bruce Springsteen. That just isn't the way it's going to happen. I also learned that I needed to have tenacity. I needed to really get out there and make cold calls and say to people, this is what I do. And I believe because I was clear on what my package was, what this body could do once people saw that I would present myself in a way, in a manner that I wasn't reaching outside of the box, that I was showing them what my box was, I was showing them who I was. All of a sudden, I started getting people interested in hearing what I had to say and in seeing my art, seeing what I had to do. And that led to knowing people who eventually gave me jobs. That even happened when I was producing the show when I was 16. I was a child actor, as you heard. I did that Art Linkletter thing, and that led to one thing after another. I toured in the show Oliver, and but one after another, I was learning who it was I was, what it was that I could do, what my art was, and then the people that I was meeting were starting to give me other opportunities. They started to give me opportunities that led to the next opportunity. And all right, so I'm saying to you, be real. For instance, like you, why don't you tell me what it is that you do? Yeah, what do you do? You play drums. What kind of drums?
I mostly play jazz.
Okay, so that's really clear. How about any singers out here? What about you? Tell me what you do. You sing R&B. Really clear. Really, really good. Who else is? Go ahead. Oh, okay, the microphone was there, but we lost you. Do you want to talk?
Mainly theater, I guess, and pop music.
Fantastic. So it sounds like you're already halfway there. You're already being real with yourselves. You're not just dreaming, oh, I could do anything. I can't tell you how many people come into my office here in the Twin Cities and say to me, they want to work with me. And I think that's great. And I say, what do you do? And they say, anything. They'll go so far as to, I'll set up an audition for them to come and perform. Play the drums, play the piano, sing, dance, whatever. And the first thing, inevitably, I'll say, great, nice to meet you, come on in, do something. And then they'll say, what would you like to hear? And, okay, so they say, what would you like to hear? And I say, do your best thing. Do whatever will introduce me to your talent. And then they'll say, well, I can do anything. Okay. Do you have any music with you? And they'll say, yes, I have this whole book of music. And I'll say, well, pick out your best thing. And they'll say again, whatever what do you want to hear? So inevitably, I'm like thinking, I don't know what the hell this person does. What the hell is this? So I grab their book, and I start looking through their book, and I'll say, okay, why don't you do this one? And they'll hem and their haw, and they'll hem and their haw. And it turns out they don't really know. They have a book of music, but they really only know one or two songs in that book of music. They don't know the rest of the songs, but they're showing me that they have songs. So there comes my second point. Once you know who you are, you need to have a repertoire. So if you were going to come in and I just wanted to hear you play the drums, what would you do? Fantastic. And then if I wanted to hear something else?
Play like a play-along track, like a big band tune or something like that.
Okay. That's fantastic. I mean, I just had a 50-year-old man in my office who's been in show business for his entire adult life, who last week came in and asked me, what should I sing at an audition? He's a singing actor. And I started saying, sing a song that would represent who you are, what it is you do. And he didn't know. He said, I don't know what you mean. And I thought, how can I be any clearer? Something that shows me your talent, something that actually it would be like an Olympic event. You have 3 minutes to show who you are, what you can do. And this fellow, 50 years old, had no idea. So you, the R&B singer, if you were going to sing, how many songs do you have in your repertoire?
I know it's a lot, though.
What?
I'm not 100% sure, but I know it's a lot. It's like over 20.
Over 20, that's fantastic. What would be your best song?
Probably a Chris Michelle song, If I Had My Way. I think that shows off my voice the best.
And then if I said to you, do you sing standards?
I don't know what that means.
Oh, you don't know what that means? No. Okay. Okay, here comes something. Here comes the next step. I don't think that you can actually be an artist if you don't know the history of the art that happened before you. If you don't know, if you only know what's happening right this very minute in time, I don't know how you can add anything new to it. You might be repeating what happened 10 years ago. To me, it seems that you need to know the entire, what led to the kind of music, for example, that you're hearing today? What led to the kind of visual art that you're seeing today? What led to what's exciting about today? So I think, I'm not going to tell you what a standard is. I think you need to find out what a standard is, because that's a pretty standard question for somebody to ask a singer. Who knows what a standard is? No one? Come on, you just bet. Ah, okay. So, all right, at least one person is raising their hand. All right. So that's what I mean about you know who you are, you have a repertoire, and you come in and you really give who you are to the people. You really show, you take it, and you want to leave that event getting a 10. You want to show off your solo. You want to make sure that you walk out of there being a 10. The next thing you can do is go into this interview or go into this audition and walk out of the room and say to yourself, who did I meet? Who is it that was in that room that I need to know for my future? And whether you get the gig or you don't get the gig, that's not what's important. What's important is that you actually went in there and introduced yourself, meaning that you went in there and you showed that you could do something and you knew who you were. The next thing you do is you send a little note to the person that you saw inside the room, and you thank them for the interview, you thank them for the audition, and you know what? Then you go home and you have a life. You can't worry if you're going to get every gig that you go in and interview or audition for. This works in any profession, actually. People come in the door, and here's an interesting story. I guess it's an interesting story. This girl came in and auditioned for a show that I was doing, and there was something about her that I really, really, really liked. But she was about 5 years too old for the role that we were casting. But I really liked her, and I remembered her. And strangely enough, she sent me a card with a picture of herself on it, and the picture really did look like her. It didn't look like some glamour shot. It didn't look like or it didn't look like some amateur shot where, you know, it looked like her father took the picture or something. It just was a really great picture that looked like her, and I decided I'm going to keep this for whatever reason. Now, I tell you, I get a lot of pictures in the mail, and I don't keep a lot of them. A lot of them go right in the garbage. We could, if you want to know more about that, I'll tell you more about that too. But this girl, I kept her picture. And about 5 years later, I was doing another show, and people were auditioning, but all of a sudden her picture in my file came to me. Her personality came to me. Her being came into my consciousness, and I realized she was actually who I was looking for. And I had to search around to figure out how to find her because her phone had been disconnected. Now, had she been keeping up with me over the years and sending me more postcards, I bet I would have kept her updated number, but that's a whole other thing. That's what I'm saying. You need to know who it is you're meeting in the room, send them a postcard, and then keep up with them over the next couple of years, because you might have made such an impression that 5 years later you'll get a call for a gig. I mean, that's kind of what happened with Herbie Hancock. I had not been with the Duke Ellington Band for many, many years, but I had kept up with my music contacts. And all of a sudden, out of the clear blue sky, bang, do you want to go on this tour with Herbie Hancock? It was pretty amazing. The pictures that go in the garbage. I don't think that you should be worried if your picture goes in the garbage. I think you should be having your life. This is just business. You send out postcards, you send out pictures, you send out emails, you keep in touch with people that you've met in the business. And you don't worry about what the effect is. Because if they hate you, you know what? They hate you anyway. So your picture's going to go in the garbage. It really doesn't matter. They're not going to stop your career. There's no big blacklist that all of a sudden your picture came across somebody's desk and they're going to call Lori Dockett and say, don't ever work with this person. That's not the way it works. They're busy people. So you contact them. If you're a pain in the ass, you're a pain in the ass. You're just surviving. You just need to have a way to make some money. You need to get work. So you need to keep in touch with people. So we're talking about be real, have a repertoire. Then you need to figure out who you're meeting and then keep in touch with them. And you could think that that's, a lot of my friends when I was your age thought I was crazy keeping in touch with all these people. It was a monthly thing. I still do it to this day. Not nearly as vigorously, but I got to a point where I didn't want to do it because I was embarrassed. I thought, if I'm just such a pain in the neck. I'm always every 6 months contacting so-and-so. He must think I'm a pain in the neck. But I made a deal with myself. I decided that unless I wasn't able to eat breakfast in the morning unless I would contact 5 people. And that sounded crazy to my friends, but I got to tell you, most of those people are not in the business today. Most of those people have dropped out because it's not a magical business where you just wish and these things happen. It happens that way for some people. As I said, you could win American Idol tomorrow. But for most people, show business is an art and a business. Yeah.
How do you keep in touch with people, and do you email them? What do you put in those emails?
Yeah. Well, I do all kinds of things. I was in New York this week, and I had an interview with somebody at Disney. It wasn't an interview. It was more just to drop by and have a cup of coffee with this person. So there was no specific job. But I have a couple of choices now. He said to me, keep in touch when I left. He actually said, keep in touch. I can either send him an email, or I can send him a postcard, or I can write him a letter, or I can send him a demo. What I decided was I would send him a postcard. I would send him a funny postcard that I really wanted to keep it more on a collegial level, that I wanted to keep it more like as a friend. You can do it in any way that you think. I think nowadays, I think emails are almost a cop-out when people send me an email. It's really easy to delete an email, and emails are not something that I want to keep for the rest of my life. But if somebody sends me a postcard, I might actually put it in a file. I might actually keep it. I keep a file of performers at the Ordway. It's a pretty large file, and I could take that postcard and throw it into the file, or I could throw it away. But chances are, if I throw it away, I've already not. That person hasn't entered my consciousness. I mean, does that answer your question? You could do it a lot of different ways. I think you have to pick each individual circumstance. It's a lot harder of a business. It's not that, there's no blueprint. You have to use your common sense. You have to keep thinking, what's best for this situation? Does that answer your question?
I have a testimonial.
Okay.
And then you can say if it answers your question.
I'm using the microphone because the sound people like that. Yeah, you know what? It shocked me. We met a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've done some stuff the Ordway with James. And like about 2 years ago on a holiday, he sends out texts. It's like, Happy Valentine's Day. And I went, and I went, that's so sweet. So he'll send out some notes, and I just felt honored and flattered and really would giggle now and again. And then I did the show over Christmas. I was the pre-show and intermission music. And they gave me a dressing room. I was like, oh my God. Okay, so I have to put something in there. So I hung my coat in there. And but when I went in there on the board, there was a nice little note written from him. You know, thank you so much for being with us. Happy opening. And I felt it changed. And I loved being there anyway, but I went 1,000%. I went, oh, that's so cool. So I think what you're saying is really valuable because in our techno age, we forget a nice handwritten thank you note is really cool to send, and that kind of contact.
You get less snail mail these days. Have you noticed that? I mean, you don't get a lot of handwritten stuff anymore. Very, 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 very rarely. So it occurred to me that that might be some way that my message would stand out. that's the only reason why I started writing handwritten notes again. I used, you know, I preferred email as an easy way to contact somebody, but I actually now think of it as a cop-out because it's way too easy, and it's not going to, you know, if you're a guy, I don't know how many emails you get a day, but I could get 150 emails in a day, and just when do you answer them? When do you even read them? So, but if something comes across my desk that's a handwritten note, I actually look at it. I'll tell you how I got the job with the Duke Ellington Band, though. I mean, I really wanted to be in show business. I wanted to be an artist, and it didn't matter to me what it cost of my being to actually participate. I would put myself into it. So, all right, I had discovered I could sing bebop. And I was singing bebop around New York City for, you know, gigs that paid $25. And, you know, I was happy. I was singing, and I was, in a sense, paying my rent by singing with these $25 gigs. This is back in the 80s. $25 went a little bit further in the 80s. But nonetheless, it was $25. So I heard the Ellington Band was looking for a male singer. And I was trying everything to get in the door. And finally, nothing. Finally, I had somebody do a videotape of me singing a bebop tune at a club. And I wrapped it up like it was a gift. And I dropped it off at the office that was looking for the singer. And I dropped it off like it was a gift for them. And, you know, easily they could have thought, what a jerk off, you know, who leaves us a gift. And I knew that, but I wasn't getting the job anyway. And I had no idea how to get through the door. So I tried this little trick. And strangely enough, they watched the tape. And I got a call. And the next thing I knew, I was singing with the Ellington Band, and I was making a lot more than $25 a gig then. Well, so, yeah. It was a crazy trick. But it worked. It could have easily backfired on me, too. But I didn't care because I didn't have the job anyway. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions? Before I go back into like tirades about, you need to be real about yourself. You need to, what kind of promo material do you have? What kind of promo material? Lori and I were just talking about our resumes.
No, I don't have anything right now.
Where are you at in school?
It's my first year.
Oh, it's your first year, okay. And are you gigging already?
A little bit.
Okay. How about you, the R&B singer? Where are you at in school? I'm using you two just because you've spoken.
Sorry, what did you say?
That's okay. What grade are you in?
Oh, I'm a freshman.
You're a freshman? That's what you said? Okay. So what do you have as promo material? What if all of a sudden I said to you, hey, great, you're an R&B singer. I happen to need an R&B singer. What would you send to me?
Well, I have a few videos I recorded of myself.
Uh-huh.
And I have some videos from our contemplative class.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding you.
Oh, I have some videos that I recorded myself of me singing, and I have some videos of me performing in contemplative.
Fantastic. Do you have a resume?
No.
Hey, you need a resume. How are people going to know what you've done? And even if you feel like you've done nothing, here's a great a story. I don't know if these are great stories. These are just what happens. I just look at it as life now. This girl sent me a resume after we just did Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at the Ordway. Okay? I don't know if you knew that, but we did. And this girl, after the show was running, sent me a resume and said she wanted to be in the show. She had no idea that the show was going to Tokyo. Okay? Her resume mostly had high school and college credits. Very little real professional credits. They were academic credits, okay? But, you know, I'm real. I like to think that I'm real about things, and I actually looked at it and I thought, well, you know, she's being honest, but she may be good. How would I know? You know, she maybe doesn't have a lot of credits, but she may be really, really good. So I had her come in and sing. She sang great, man. And do you know, a few weeks before we were going to Tokyo, a girl dropped out of the show, and for some reason, I just thought, let's use her. Let's give her first professional credit. And she was great in the show. She was fantastic in the show. I was thrilled. In fact, I just hired her for another gig. So you just don't know where things are going to lead. You need to have a resume, because people are going to want to. You need a resume for whatever business. You don't have to go into show business. Every adult who wants to be in business, I know it's boring, needs a resume. I still have one. Lori and I were just talking about it. We both still have them. We don't think about updating it as much, and that actually is maybe something that maybe Lori and I would be busier if we updated them. I don't know. I think you need to have a cutting edge. I think that's all. I think that's what will give you a cutting edge. If you know who you are and you can actually represent that at an audition. And that includes not only your repertoire, but your resume as well. How many of you want to get into, how many of you think of yourselves as wanting to get into jazz? And how many of you want to get into pop? And theater? Anybody? One. Two. Oh, I see. More. My eyes ain't what they used to be. That's cool. That's very cool. Those of you that want to get into theater, have you thought about getting into pop as well? You could speak. Yeah. And how about those of you in pop? Have you thought about being in theater? No. Why is that? You what? No, tell me the truth. What? Is it not cool, or is it you just never thought about it, or what? You just didn't think of... You never thought about it, I see. Actually, I mean, so that was something I learned early on, was that what could I do? You may discover that you could be in the theater and go from doing $25 gigs to actually making about $2,000 a week, which is something, wow, that'll blow your mind. Don't get too comfortable, because you don't get paid that much all the time, but it happens. It happens to people. And it literally, it's a roll of the dice. In that way, I guess you could say it's luck. Because in show business, you know, that Frank Sinatra song, That's Life. You're up and you're down. It's just like that in show business. Show business isn't the kind of career where you're going to all of a sudden get a job at Cargill and work your way up. Show business is more like this. It's so completely scattered where you're going to be. I mean, one day you're making $2,000 a week. The next week you're making nothing. Because these gigs are all individual gigs. You're a freelancer your whole life. And that's why I push the idea of keeping in touch with people. If you keep in touch with them, they'll actually maybe be able to remember you when they have a gig. So, I don't know. I thought you might have a few more questions, but I can keep going, believe me. Yes, Lori.
Thank you for the microphone. I know, I like that. My first is I would love for you to tell us maybe 3 experiences as a performer that are just like, you know, I'm sure there was something on Broadway, perhaps something on the road, or 3 different performances. That's one half. And the second half, from a business standpoint, you've been producing more shows over the years, writing shows, packaging them. Could you talk a little bit about that process? Like,
sure.
If you're going to do it, like I say, a compilation show or a review or something, and/or how would you select something and then go forward with it?
Okay, sure.
Thanks.
I'll tell you, performing-wise, the greatest performing moments, I think the greatest performing moment I've had still to this day, first I'll tell you this other story. I was writing a show called Nightclub Confidential, and it was just a show I was writing with a bunch of friends. And my friends wanted me to be in the show, and I didn't really think I should. I didn't think I was good enough. I wanted someone better than me to be in the show. And they kept saying, no, you can do it, and you should do this bebop tune called Cloudburst, written by Jon Hendricks. And I I just didn't think I was good enough. But I decided we were going to do what was called a backers audition, which is when you go in and you try the show out, you kind of demonstrate the show to people who will give you money to do the show. So we were doing this backers audition of the show, and I said to them, all right, you know, for the backers auditions, I'll do it, but when we really do the show, I want to get somebody better. And there's a videotape of this moment because it was an amazing moment for me. We're doing this presentation, and all of a sudden it comes time for my solo to sing Cloudburst, and I go into it, I do the number, and in the middle of the number, the audience spontaneously goes into these like cheering and applauding, and I'm like still thinking I'm not good enough. And all of a sudden, the look that came over my face, and I say it because I can now see it on the videotape, but what was going on inside of me was absolutely stunned to realize that I could communicate with an audience that well, that I could actually do it, that I was actually a bebop singer. I didn't have any idea. It was a revelation, and my whole body, it took over my whole body. I just felt like I felt like singing was flying. All of a sudden, I felt like I was flying. And strangely enough, as opposed to being in this show, which ended up playing in New York and London and all over the country, Los Angeles, instead of going on with my own show, that's what led to me making that video. This is the videotape I was talking about that I wrapped up and gave to the Ellington people, and I ended up going off and doing a different show, and my show had a life of its own. That was one performing experience. The other performing experience that I will never forget is playing Judas and actually being able to get on the roller coaster ride that was Jesus Christ Superstar and just float on air for 2.5 hours. The crazy thing I learned also while I was playing Judas was that was about the most I could sing. That was about it. If I wanted to be in Jesus Christ Superstar, it meant that I couldn't talk or utter a sound except for the times I was on stage. If I would sing during the day, I could not get through the show. There was no two ways about it. That was the max I could do. And I was getting great reviews. I was getting incredible response. I was floating. I was flying. Man, when I was on the stage, I was flying, but I really learned that I had to take care of my instrument. I went to this doctor because after the opening week, I all of a sudden discovered that I had laryngitis during the day, so I thought at night I would not be able to do it, so I went to a doctor. Of course, I took prednisone and the whole, I don't know if you know what prednisone is, but it's a steroid that they give you when you lose your voice. But he said to me, "You don't understand. You have a gift. And that gift is your voice, and you have to take care of it like it's a precious jewel. And part of it being a precious jewel is that you have to keep it in the right environment, and you have to know when it needs to rest, and you have to know just how far you can push it. And this is as far as you can push it, James. You can sing this score that happens to have full belted high D's in it, which for me was high. I mean, I could never sing that show today. But I learned that our instruments are what we have, that we're using our bodies as our instruments, and if you didn't take care of it, if you didn't take care of your hands, if all of a sudden you sawed off one of your fingers during the day, you wouldn't be able to do the show at night. And so it was a real discipline. It was a new experience for me to think that you could be flying so high, but the cost was I couldn't speak during the day. It was that's two. Those are the two that really stick in my mind the most, the performing experiences. I mean, I can tell you funny stories where, like, I was in Cats on Broadway, and one day there would be these nutty people who would dress up like cats and wait for you at the stage door. That was really you know, ridiculous. But this one guy one day, we're doing the show, and all of a sudden, this guy from the audience walks up onto the stage, and he has a bag filled with Kit Kat bars, and he's going, "Here, kitty, 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 kitty," to like human beings. And you're like thinking, okay, now, I don't want to be murdered. I better take his Kit Kat bar, and I better walk him backstage and get a cop as soon as possible. Because, you know, this nut is, "Here, kitty, 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 kitty." As far as putting together a show, you know, for me, it's, right now I'm grappling with something. I was offered a show and to direct, and I really don't like this show. And so, but they're offering me $30,000 to do it. So now, what do? You either do it. Well, I got to tell you the truth. I think I'm not going to do it. But I have done it in the past. And it's not that I don't need the money. I do need the money. But you got to find out, if you could, for me, all of a sudden it's become an integrity thing. And I can afford to not do it right now. Believe me, if I didn't have my job at the Ordway, I'd be doing it. So how I choose these shows and package these shows, generally it comes down to, does it fit in with my aesthetic? So I start out by picking a show that I care about, a show that I think is worthwhile, and then you've got to get all these pieces together. You've got to get the drummer, you've got to get the person to design the set, you've got to find the costumer, and you hope that they have the same aesthetic. You actually interview them and hope that they will come on the ride and not just do it for the money. Do it because they actually care about, you know, there could be a drummer who thinks that musical comedy or musical theater is not cool and is just doing it for the money, but it actually shows in the finished product if the drummer, who you may think isn't the most important part of a musical theater piece, but if that drummer is actually not on the ride, is not on the groove, is not with it, there's something that's not electrifying that show. So you have to put together all these different elements and hope that you find artists that are actually wanting to do it. And that's pretty much how I put together shows. Yeah. Microphone, please. Holy cow.
You've mentioned a lot of singers. Like, what would be the audition process for a guitar player that wants to play for the pit orchestra, or maybe a drummer, a bass player? Is there like fixed musicians that always get this type of gigs?
Well, there are musicians that usually get those kind of gigs because they're known for doing those kind of gigs, but that's the case for everyone, for singers, for drummers, for costume designers, for... The way you would probably interview is, first of all, you have to know contractors. Those are the people that put together the band and first bring the list of orchestra members to the person who is on top of them, who is actually producing the show and gives the okay. But if you were starting out, the first thing you'd have to do is go meet the contractor and sight read music. Just playing a piece that you knew, they might have you play a piece that you know, but the next thing they're going to definitely do is have you sight read, because in a case like musical theater, you have to be able to play the page. There's no improvising in musical theater. There's very rare cases where they'll say to you, play, you know, what you want.
Do you get the music in advance?
No.
No.
When you do the show, you actually will get the music in advance to practice. But when I'm talking about sight reading, I'm talking about they're going to plop it down in front of you, and they're going to expect you to play it, and play the page. Because, as I say, there's no improvisation in it. Yeah.
James, and this is an odd question, but I found it. So, let's say Joseph, the show. Let's say a guitarist or a player in the pit. What's an average weekly salary for a musician?
For a show like that, generally you're paid in a manner where it's called per service. So you're paid per show or per performance or per rehearsal. And I'd say the average salary is anywhere from $120 to $160 per service for 3 hours of work. And 8 shows a week. And you're guaranteed those 8 shows a week. So multiply 8 by 125, 160, you know, between that kind of average. Absolutely. That's about it. That's what they were getting. They were getting 1,250 in Tokyo a week.
2, 3 more minutes. Go, we have one person
Yeah.
back here. I'll run it. We'll meet halfway. Go.
I just wanted to know, my name is Birdie Mike. I was just wondering, does social media in casting, do you do any social media for casting, such as Facebook, LinkedIn, anything like that?
You know, I'm Facebook phobic, and I'm on Facebook, but I just am afraid of it because everyone knows everything about you, and I'm more private than that.
Do you use Minnesota Playlist or anything like that?
Yeah, we do. Definitely, I mean, we use Facebook, too. It just has to be brought sometimes. YouTube is unbelievably big, too, that all of a sudden you'll find somebody on YouTube or someone. I send a lot of demos out via YouTube. I don't care if the whole world looks at it.
Would you suggest to people putting links like that on their resume?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I put it in my bio in the program. It says if you want to know more about James, go to www.jamesrocco.com. And it'll tell you things that are 3 years old.
Thank you.
Wonderful singer, actor, by the way, right here. Sitting next
Good
to
to
Aaron Schwab, by the way.
Erin, how are you?
Hi, Mr. Rocco.
Hi, how are you, Ms. Schwab? I have her picture and resume in my file. And I hope she has mine in hers. I don't think she does, though.
One more question, anybody?
You need to send your picture over to us, though. Do it.
I mean, I'm not really
You can come to an
interested-
audition, and I think it's next week. I'm just having general auditions. You're welcome to come and sing. Sure.
He'll be there.
All right. Give me your phone number now. Cool. What? Sorry.
No. I'm a drummer, and I have a resume. I have a website, actually.
Way to go.
Yeah, all those kinds of things. But more so, people don't like to pay musicians these days for things not related to theater, as far as I can tell. But, what's your advice for a musician trying to find a paying gig in the pop world? What kinds of people am I going to be looking for?
You need to know other musicians, first of all, that are making a living. So you need to get out there and figure out not just the guys that are, playing over at the Turf Club, but who are the guys that are actually making a living at doing sessions or backing other artists. That would be a great way, I think, for you to get into. You need to get into the circle.
Yeah, I'm definitely aware of that. My question is, are there other producers or things like the Duke Ellington office or how you got in touch with Herbie Hancock? Are there, agents or other kinds of people that I could cold call or look for to send things to?
There are all those things. I'm less familiar with what is happening right here in the Twin Cities in the music business than I am with the theater in the Twin Cities, because that's what I do 24 hours a day here. But there are definitely agents. There are definitely people who are you a contemporary player, like a pop contemporary?
Yeah, I play a lot of R&B, jazz, funk, hip-hop, soul stuff.
So who are the local groups that are making it, like Jeremy Messersmith or who, What? Is he not from here? Oh, yeah. I mean, who are those people that are making it? And who are their producers? That's who you need to know.
Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah.
There's no directory for kinds of
No,
offices
it's just not that easy. It's like there's this, it's a maze, and there's a piece of cheese at the end of the maze, and it never ends. Ask Aaron. It goes on for the rest of your life. You're constantly going for this cheese. How do I get there? How do I get there? How do I get there?
And that's what I figured. I just want to get your opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very true. And what, and I did this 30 years ago, 30-some years ago. I looked at the city pages and I wrote all the clubs down where I would want to work. And then I looked at clubs that didn't have music and I sold music to them. And then you meet other musicians, somebody's sick and you have a good reputation, they call you up. And then you start meeting more producers and agents. So it is just like that.
You just have to keep going. You have to contact 5 people in the morning before you have breakfast, or you don't get to have breakfast that day. There's nothing. Thank you. Thank you. It was fabulous meeting you. Thank you.